and welcome back to another episode. In this episode, we're gonna go together and implement error handling. So far we managed to have our application. We have managed to have the init function login. So I could just click and then open up this, maybe log in, cancel. Here is the problem. I actually canceled right now, but we don't see any error. We don't see anything, right? What if something goes wrong? What if there is no internet or, things like that? Here is the case. We're going to go together in this episode and implement that. So, if you are coming to this video for the first time, have not watched the other videos in this series, don't worry, still you can watch it. But I strongly recommend you to just go and check the playlist, other videos, especially the previous one, which we have implemented, the application, all the logic so far. So let's go and implement what we've done together. All right, so this is our login function, right? When I click on this button right now, so this is the function that is going to be triggered. So accessing token and all the other things that we so far implemented together. But what if something in here goes wrong? Then the application crashes, right? So I want you to first understand the concept of Flutter on error, Flutter error on error. So what is that? So when Flutter can catch kind of errors that is happening in Flutter frameworks, like for example, during the paint or, build and things like that, those errors are going to be routed to on error. So you can actually catch those exceptions and stack traces. And in this case, for example, I'm checking if I am in development. I'm just dumping to the console. Otherwise, I will reroute that to handle uncut errors. So then what are those uncut errors like in zone? So Flutter is running like when you have run app, you're running that in a zone, right? So any errors that can happen and it's not from Flutter, like Flutter cannot catch it. Like an example would be a callback, like an asynchronous call in a callback. The example would be probably the login. Here is our case as well. Those uncut errors will be routed to zone. So here is where you have zone errors. I also, from the Flutter error, I will also route that to the zone in Dart zone, let's say, and the current zone to the uncut error. So I have all the errors here. So here is the best time then actually you can send these errors to an error reporting system like Sentry or other, systems if you have. So this is the time that you might want to do something, in your case and do something here. So this concept is good by itself. So for having these zone errors, you need to wrap your run app into runZoneGuarded. So the runZoneGuarded will have a callback where you can have run app and then all of your, implementation, all the widgets that you have, and then you can do whatever you want. I want to give you one tip here is that this widget Flutter binding dot ensure initialized must be called if you have runZoneGuarded inside the ZoneGuarded, right? That is going to ensure there are a few things that you want. It will be initialized. Some initialization will happen before run app is happening. So this is also very important when you have, for example, Firebase initialization, or we're gonna do something here. That's the reason I put this here. So you will see that shortly. So then all the uncut errors can go to the second callback, which is accepting the errors and stack traces. But so far, so good. But that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna fix our problem. So far, we're just routing all the uncut and cut errors to a zone handle uncut errors like this section. So this is good for reporting to an error reporting system, but it's not really what we're looking for. What we want to really do, we're gonna go back to our service. What we really want to do here is we want to make sure when the login is in our infrastructure layer, right? So where we have all the logic calling and dealing with network, for example, and accepting, receiving data and sending requests. When there is anything is happening here, so from here we want to catch errors. Well, you might say, okay, the easiest is like, well, I can just go say try catch, and I get that, right? But you need to be careful about try catch, because that was a reason I mentioned about runZoneGuarded and all the uncut errors. Because if you have try catch, you are catching the errors right now, and then it will not go there and you never understand. So be really careful about try catch. While it's great because you gracefully handle errors, and that's what we're going to do, but you should be really careful about handling errors silently. This is very important for you. You don't want to just have try catch because you don't want your application to crash, but you want to actually do something with it. Let's see what we can do together here. So in this case, like we have a try catch. Let's implement something. Well, the easiest is try catch, right? Any errors? Well, if it's good, it's good. Otherwise, well, any errors? Well, I would say like in our implementation right now, we might go further and then implement different things. Let's understand. So first of all, our login, it's returning a string, right? And that is of course expected. So if I don't return anything here, then well, technically I get right now an error here. You see that my login, my editor is nagging, something is wrong. So I'm gonna do more here. In Dart, you can have an keyword that can happen on catching different errors, different exceptions. And that is a very good thing. I'll show you a few exceptions that you can handle here. So the first exception I'm going to talk about is the timeout. We can have timeout exception. You look at it here. And then you can have catch an error. And now and whenever the error, the type of error that is happening here is timeout exception, it comes to this block where I can say, for example, return error dot, let's say, error dot message. There is one problem with error dot message is because, look at this. This is string. This is nullable. There might be no reason, like no message here. What should I do? I can just maybe say, if it's null, just send out timeout error. That's pretty much it. You can do whatever else you want. This is just the simple things. I think you get the idea, and you can expand on top of that, right? So you don't want to write error messages right away here, probably, right? You want to probably create a class, and we will actually do that at the end of these sessions when we are implementing a refactoring part of our application to make it a bit better. But until now, I think this is good enough. So what else? What kind of other exception we can have? One another exception you can have is, you can have on platform exception. Platform exception. All right. So when platform exception is happening, then give me a reason why it's happening. You can return again error.message. But again, this is a problem. There might be string like null. So you can say here in this case, if it's null again, say something is wrong, code. You can probably return error.code. I think code is always here. Yes, that's always here. You look at this, it's always a string. It's not null. So this is another example. What else we can do? Let me just duplicate this. We can do maybe format exception. Yeah. Format exception is like you're expecting something, but it just does not happen, right? So then you can say again, error message here. Let's see what we have here. We have message, offset, and source, and blah blah. But I just need message, to be honest. And in this case, the format exception is always returning some kind of messages. So another thing that we can do is we have timeout format, we have platform exception, and we can have maybe socket exception when socket is closing or you don't have internet, things like that. That's actually a very good one, socket exception. So on socket exception, you can again return like why. So you can return error dot message. There is a message here. Are you like the question might be, can we always like return a message? Can we do customize? Like you definitely can do whatever you want, right? It's just giving you some idea here. So now I have this also. Well, maybe in this case, let's say I have also accept messages here. That's very good. So I have all of this right now. And what if like there is an error out of these four, like timeout, format, socket? Well, okay, there is then something that I don't expect. It's like terribly wrong, right? Then I can return, let's say, I don't know, unknown error, and then probably I can return like error dot runtime type. Like, let's see what is the type of error. Well, at least this is something good. Here is the case. You can also redirect these errors to zone current dot unhandled error, or wherever you have like error reporting system, like if you have a service, if you're using Sentry or things like that, you can also redirect that, so that there is something is happening. It's in your application, it's unknown, and you should debug it. Probably you should have also stack trace, because the second one here is the stack trace. So you can have a stack trace, and probably you want to handle the stack trace in your error reporting system and to realize. So this is good. So far, anything that is happening here, I can realize. Like even if this function that now is parsing, our ID token and all the results and storing stuff, if something goes wrong there, it comes to one of these, or maybe goes to the last one, and then But why do I now return a message here? So what I can do, I can actually go back to my now home, where I have the button. So you remember from previous episode, hopefully, we have this button, sign up, sign out, and then I click, and on the login, pass this here as a teardown, function. But now I can actually have this like a callback, and that should be also a sync, because I want to wait for this. Now I can call this, but that's good. So then I can say this is my result. And well, I told you like we are returning a string, probably not a good thing. Maybe you should have a class like a success class or something. And then here we are returning whenever everything goes fine, we're returning success. And probably here I should also maybe have something else. Let's say parsing token went wrong. So I know that now it's coming. But now I have this success, right? So now if I come back here, I can say in my homepage where I have the button, I can say now the result, I know it's always a string. If it's not success, if it's success, we'll just leave it in our application right now. Why? Exactly, you're right. Because we have Go Router and we're changing the state, and well, it's automatically redirecting. So we might not need to show anything. We can show like technically a snack bar and say success, but well, it's not necessary. Like user can understand, right? But if it's not success, then we might want to do something. Like we might want to create a snack bar, and we're gonna pass a text which is going to just show our results to user. So our result right now is returning like some of the exception messages. You might not want to show those because some of them are like nonsense to user, right? You might want to customize the errors based on the different, let's say codes. So you can interpret those codes and say something meaningful to user. So I think there is something wrong here is because this is content and not. Okay, that's good. So now I created my snack bar. What I can do, I can say scaffold messenger dot of context dot is it show? Yeah, show a snack bar, and then the snack bar. So now actually I am showing my snack bar. Well, I mean this is snack bar. So this one. There you go. That is good. So look at it. What is going to happen? Let's have the hot restart. That's good. So now it's we're coming back shortly here. Now it's hot restart. So now we're gonna click on this. This time, what if user at this time say cancel? Previously, before handling that, we did not have anything. I'm just gonna cancel. Now I say failed. I'm showing something to my user. Or maybe I can open the whole thing and then cancel here. Again, we're showing something to user. This is much better. So now I can go, actually, I can turn off my internet. I don't want to do that right now, but you test it later when you implement. Turn off internet, and then you get a message that, well, socket exception error, like internet, there is no internet or something like that. So you're handling everything gracefully. But there is one more thing here. So one more thing is here is like when you go up, we had this init function. You remember in previous episode, we actually added here to the constructor, but we don't need to necessarily do that, right? There are other ways we mentioned. Like one of those ways is to add them to the main before run app, because we want to make sure user is logged in. Let's do that. And then we need to also handle the error for init function. Well, should we? Yes, we should. Let's go and refine this a bit. First of all, I'm going to remove this constructor right now. All the way. Remove that, and I go to main. Now I come in here, and I await for this init here. But if you remember from the previous video, we already once added here, we redirect and nothing happened. Like refresh and nothing happened. Why? Because I kept it for here. Because in our router, we have a redirect, which is listening to this change notifier, login info. We're changing a state, that's fine, but when app is running, but we're calling the init before that. State is changing and it never gets to this redirect. That's why, even though we've been logged in, that didn't happen. However, we could do one thing here. I kept it here so I wanted to tell you quickly. So now I'm calling this, waiting to make sure that user is get the refresh token and everything is fine. And that we're changing the state here. Also, user is logged in if everything goes well. And this also parentheses, that was the reason I put this here, because I'm calling something here to initialize the app. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the Go router before I handle the error. Now I know that before even app is Go router is running, we are actually changing the state, right? So then there is one initial location property in Go router where you can say here for the first time. You remember in previous video whenever we refresh, we mentioned that, okay, user sees the log homepage and then they redirect. That was the reason. And now what we can do, we can say initial here is the thing. So we can have like, if user is logged in, please go to like home, slash menu, and otherwise go to home page. Now I can actually define my initial location. By default, the initial location is always slash. So that was the reason you had to go to home, and then let's see what will happen. However, we have not yet implemented errors for this gracefully. If anything goes wrong here, the whole app will, boom, explode. So what we need to do, we need to do the same thing as we've done for login. But is there any way that we can reuse the same thing? Yeah, perhaps. Let's do that. So either I can go and do the whole thing again, or I can create another method which is going to return a string, maybe. Let's call it handle or error handler. And then here, this is going to technically accept a callback, like function callback. Oh, that's good. So then I can move my try and the entire catch to this. And then in try, I can just have callback return. Whatever. Yeah, let's do that. And this function is going to return string. That's good. Now I can come to my function here. I can actually remove the whole thing. That's good. And then I can wrap my logic into error handler and then have these as a callback. But that's very good. Now we actually wrapped our logic into this error handler function, which is very nice. But there is one thing that we did not take into account. And let's look at this. We actually passed a future callback, right? We're going to wait for this to be resolved. Therefore, here is something wrong. This is actually going to be a future. Well, if I go a little bit up here, I can define a type. Let's say there is already in Flutter a type called async callback, but that returns void. But what we want to do here, we want to define a new type, which is going to be, let's say, async callback string. And then let's just name it something, doesn't matter. And then we say this is future return. This is going to be a future return a string, and it's going to be a function. And that's it. Now I have a new definition. So I'm going to go down and use that for my, instead of this. And now let's look at this. This is the correct one because the callback we're passing is always an async. But in this case, well, you are right. This is not async. I am pretty sure it's always async, by the way, because I'm writing this code. So because some people say, no, maybe I don't. If you don't have async, it's synchronous, that's fine. You can just ignore that and you should be good to go. But I am now making sure it's actually async, and this is going to return then a future string, right? Because I want to make this async. And then here, I can wait for the result of a callback, which is this function, like this function. And then I return the whole error handler return. So let's see if this is going to work. Just the simple, I just made a simple wrapper. Well, you don't need to do that, but just made a simple wrapper for my function. Now, if I cancel, yeah, it's still working. And now I can come back to my init function, and then I can say, Well, there will be a few changes here. Here is the things. I will just return the result, which is going to be a string. I just want to make it as consistent as possible. If there is a no secure refresh token, is you are not, or you need to log in. And then I'm gonna have my error handler function, which is very nice callback. Make it async. Then there you go. Pass everything here. Make sure you're returning this. And there you go. So now we are also handling error in my init function. We're not gonna use actually this string for init function at the moment, but if we want, we can store this message somewhere and then show to users, say, oh, sorry, you're kicked out or you're logged out, you need to log in again, or all the other messages, error messages that we already had. To simplify this, I can also remove this and return that. So now it's very close to what we already had in our login with a little bit of a different, concept. So now we also make it consistent. Very nice. So now if I refresh, then user will come to my home page because it's not logged in, but that's exactly what I'm expecting. But let's say, let's log in. Let's actually log in and test out. Well, let's cancel, see it's working. Yeah, it's working. Very nice. Let's go there, and I'm gonna log in. Cool at majidajian.com and my password. Then I'm gonna go and log in, and voila, access denied. You see now, this is an error. This was deliberate. So now users see better errors. Okay. The reason it was access denied because I blocked my user in auth0. So now I will, in the next episode, I will go and unblock user and then I will log in again. I just wanted to show you how you can show gracefully messages to your users. So now you can handle all the errors for init and login. Very nice. Good luck. I'll see you in the next episode.